LEGO games have gone through a lot on handhelds. Back on the PSP, they started one-to-one with their then PS2 brothers. But somewhere in the journey, the developers decided to make handheld versions different. Watered down, isometric, no multiplayer, little mobile games, even going as far as to make touch-specific everything in the early Vita days. But they slowly worked on getting back to the console level formula, getting rid of level failures here, putting proper camera angles there. And one standout from the Vita and 3DS era is a game based on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For the next part of our 10th anniversary throwbacks, we're going into the first handheld game to try to add back an open world sandbox. Here is my review of LEGO Marvel's Avengers for the PS Vita and PlayStation TV. The story of this game is centered around the first two Avengers movies of the MCU. You would play out all the major scenes of those two movies along with a couple extras here and there, like the train scene from Captain America: The First Avenger. The way this is presented, I think, is cute. A lot of the animations and changes they made are funny in that LEGO way, like Iron Man having no pants after the helicarrier jumpstart and having it covered up by Captain America's shield. When it comes to gameplay, this is a 3D beat-em-up game with platforming and puzzle elements. As you play, you'll go through 3D areas, fight waves of enemies, and interact with many things, building LEGO objects to solve puzzles. To start things off, what's different about the PS Vita version? Because there are a good number of changes. When compared to previous handheld entries, this game added a decently large open world, or well, sandbox is probably the better term. We've got a large New York City to freely explore, whether on the ground or in the air, with Iron Man and Thor. While not as large as the open world on other platforms, this was a big deal after so many downgraded and mobile-esque LEGO games on handhelds. Though it is still downgraded, there are some segments not in the handheld release at all, like the Loki boss fight in Germany, and most of the levels are different, with the home console version pretty much always having a party of characters running around, while the Vita has only one character out at a time, having you completely swap out for another character instead of just walking next to each other. Granted, there are a few instances where you do have multiple characters out in a traditional fashion, but they're few and far between. Outside of that, progression is pretty similar. You move around an overworld to advance the story forward, mostly pointed towards the next story item. When you go through those, you play levels, though you can always opt out from the map screen to explore the overworld once it is unlocked. Now, the story levels are fairly similar to their console counterparts, having you go through a lot of the same areas of these movies, like fighting in the Battle of New York or fixing the helicarrier with Cap and Iron Man. Being in the more modern style of LEGO titles, you'll be fighting a lot of enemies in wave-based combat, mostly to clear an area so you can break everything, assemble LEGO objects, and solve puzzles. You mostly do this with one character, though you can switch out with others, along with you having little Avengers icons to give you hints on who you need to use for the current puzzle. As you clear these levels, you can fulfill little challenges to unlock bricks as well as playable characters and vehicles, both from the MCU movies and a few here and there that were still years and years away, like the Jane Foster version of Thor. And then there's the free roam, what a lot of handheld fans were wanting at the time. You have a decently large city to freely run, drive, or fly around with some little mini games that you can trek through and keep busy with, as well as an explorable shield helicarrier. It's not a huge amount of content, but it's a lot of fun to just explore and fly around. And as this comes together, we have a fun LEGO game, though it does feel a little bit restrained by its source material. You have characters that unlock not from the MCU films, but only having the two movies to adapt, it does feel a bit smaller in scale than the other LEGO games, especially considering the other Marvel LEGO games take from all things Marvel instead of just adapting movies. And this brings us to content and length. We have an okay amount to do here, and the game will take you a good 6 to 8 hours to clear, but it's a fair bit shorter than most other LEGO games out there. Next is presentation, which I think is fine. Visually, the game looks good on the Vita with nice models and animations. Now on the PlayStation TV, it still looks decent, though you can see a lot more of the little jaggies around studs and characters. But it's not a huge deal, not anywhere near like the difference was with Need for Speed Most Wanted. The biggest problem I find with this game is audio. They used recorded lines from the two movies, though to fill in gaps of action where there aren't any lines, they throw voice clips all over the place, completely out of order to what is happening on screen. It's not a gigantic problem, but many MCU fans will immediately pick up on it with little moments of "that's not where they said that." And then we get to performance, which I deem acceptable. It's not a perfect 30 FPS from start to finish. When you go through particular animations like Iron Man's micro missiles, you do get some stutters and frame drops. But when you're in control, it's pretty smooth. Now, before we conclude, why did I choose this to be in the Throwback series? LEGO Avengers is alright, but far from the strongest LEGO title out there. I chose it because of its importance to the evolution or re-evolution of handheld LEGO games. Ever since they made the handheld titles little mobile-like experiences, we wanted the home console feel back. While this didn't fully bring us there, that didn't really happen until the Switch. But having an open world again was a massive deal for handheld fans. Plus, this game has somewhat of a sentimental value for me in my journey as a creator. This is the only LEGO game I've ever received a review copy for. It was sent to me as a physical copy in the mail and even included a little mini LEGO kit for a Quinjet. In conclusion, LEGO Avengers brought handheld gamers one step closer to having the full experience on portables again by adding a free roam New York City. Now on the downside, it's still stripped down compared to the home console release, has small frame dips during animations, and the game itself is rather short and restricted due to adapting to MCU movies instead of taking from everything Marvel Comics. But despite that, it was one of the better LEGO games available for the Vita and is still fun for little bite-sized Avengers adaptations. Just a shame it never got a sequel to include Infinity War and Endgame. PS Vita Reviews rates LEGO Marvel's Avengers for the PS Vita and PlayStation TV a 7 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.